So you bought Europa Universalis 5 and you've got no idea what you're doing. You continuously fail every single time. Or you're about to buy EU5 and you want to make sure you know what you're doing before you even begin your first campaign. Well, you came to the right place. By the end of this video, not only will you properly understand the game, but you will never fail again. And if you do, then make sure to watch this video again because you fucked up, Aaron. You fucked up big time, alright? You didn't watch it properly. But I got you covered. You know why? I have timestamped the entire video. So if you're interested in a specific mechanic, check the timestamp below. That being said, you really should watch the whole video fully if you actually want to know why your games are going bad. Now, if you do learn something, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and leave all notifications on so you actually get notified when I release my next mechanics guide. And after you watch this video, I've got individual mechanics guides for every main mechanic of the game linked in the description below, as well as proper playthroughs to further deepen your knowledge of the game. Also, if you haven't purchased EU5 or you'd like to get any game from Paradox, consider using my affiliate link. I get a commission on any purchase and it would really help out massively. This is literally how I keep the channel running. Thank you so much for considering it. So you've loaded a brand new game and you're met with the map of 1337. What do we do now? Well, you can hover over any country in the game, left click on it, and then you have this pop up here. For every individual country that you like to play as, you've got a little bit of information about it before you start your campaign. Before we explain this pop up, it is also important that we know that we can observe a game if you like to, which means the game can run without us actually playing as any nation. If we go at the bottom of the screen, we have our maps and we can left click to pin our favorite maps, which means that these particular maps will always be shown even if you're not hovering over the lower part of your screen. And in case I have more maps than you, that is because I go through the individual map tabs and then I click the star. Clicking the star allows you to pin at the bottom the map. So now we have an extra one, the terrain map, right next to the political map. I recommend you go through every single map to familiarize yourself a little bit better with what the game has to offer from an information's perspective, because every single map will in detail explain a little bit more your situation in the game. We're also going to explain these situations individually as we go in the video, but for the time being, one important thing that we need to know is that you can go to the government map modes and we can click building based countries, which will bring up a brand new map. Why did we click this? Well, because there's more countries that you can play that are not actual countries, but they are buildings that behave like countries. So that is, for example, the Hanseatic League, which is a conglomerate of trading buildings built all over the northern parts of Europe. The Hanseatic League is not the only one. In the south, we've got the banks of Bardi as well as Peruzzi. And in the Japanese islands, we have the clans, which again is a building-based country that in the 1400s, with the advent of the Sengoku Jidai, will become an actual physical country within Japan. There's more types of countries. We also have army-based countries, which in essence are the hordes of the Golden Horde, the Chagatai Horde, Gurkhan, Hulegais. There's a fourth type of country, the population-based country. Now, the population-based country, in essence, cannot be played at the current moment. They exist on the map as the population is present in the game, and in certain cases, some of these nations also act as tributaries of other nations. The Permian people here are tributaries of the Republic of Veliki Novgorod, but for the time being, it doesn't really do anything. Now, you might also be wondering why, despite me clicking nations on the map, I'm still not able to play as any of them. That's because you have to disable Observer and then click whatever nation you desire in order to play as it. And a few more things important to know here. Before you start your first campaign, you want to click the game rules, as this is important. It will shape how your campaign is going to go. There's a difficulty slider where you have increased army maintenance if you go to hard or very hard for you as a player, which means you're going to pay more for your units. Then there's an AI difficulty. The AI gets some significant bonuses, including 20% more discipline. What it doesn't tell you here is that the AI also becomes more aggressive on very hard difficulty. I know, because I'm a fucking nerd and I checked the game files, okay? The rest of the settings are pretty intuitive. It is important that you understand some of them in particular though, such as, for example, the ability to change country. If you have it allowed, it will disable your achievements. So you cannot go for Ironman game with achievements if you've got this particular option on. If we turn it off, then we can turn on our Ironman game and we can get our achievements. There are other rules that will prevent us from getting achievements. For example, if we turn on the missions, again, you can stay in Ironman with missions enabled, but you will not be able to get achievements. For your first playthrough, I strongly recommend that you turn off Ironman. What is Ironman actually? Because some of you probably are new to the genre. In essence, if you have this particular feature turned on, you will not be able to save whenever you want. The game will automatically save for you. So whatever happens, happens. There's no rollbacksies, there's no takes backsies. If you've got a really bad situation you cannot get out of, you might end up dying and having to restart the game altogether. So your first few playthroughs, if you're not an experienced EU4 player, or even if you are, I strongly encourage you to have Ironman disabled, which of course means you cannot get achievements. Now, if you do enable missions, also make sure you have them set so that you get rewards after every task. Otherwise, it will not give you anything until the end of the entire mission tree if you had the default setting for it. Another important thing to know here is from the flavor tab, it will decide a lot of the things that AI does. For example, you can decide what countries can do colonization. So if you have this set to only Western countries, and that can in fact be Ironman and achievements compatible, then only Western countries will colonize the New World and other parts of the world. Or you can just set it to all countries, and then you might end up with the Yuan or Japan having parts of the New World by the time you get there. It's up to you how you want to spice your game. Similarly, you can have ahistorical formable nations on, which again is achievements compatible, and that will allow you to form nations like the Roman Empire, Carthage, Belgium, you know, just fictional countries that never plausibly could have existed, right? Also important from the flavor tab is the institution spawn. If you go for the historical institution spawn, it will spawn exactly in the same location always. If you go for dynamic, it will spawn in potential locations if they fulfill the requirements. You also can change the name of Byzantium to the Eastern Roman Empire, which in my opinion should be the default setting, but hey, who am I to judge, right? And you can choose where the Black Plague originates from, as well as the year when it starts. If you go on random though, you cannot get achievements, and it will significantly change your game, so keep that in mind. Also, from the country selection tab, if you're not sure where a country is on the map because you've got not so much knowledge about the world of 1337, you can just type in the name. So let's say France. I have no idea where France is on the map. Whoa. We can click on it, and then we can start playing as the French, and it even highlights it, Fred. Look, it's above me. The French nation was in front of us all along. Goes without saying, there is a lot of information illustrated to the side here when you click on a nation. I'm not going to tell you, oh, this is population, this is how much manpower you can have, because you can read. I'm pretty sure you can read. What I will show you is the important stuff, namely, if you go to content, it will let you know how much unique content there is for this particular nation. So there's 31 unique content for France, and then there's unique content for the French culture, for Catholicism, Christianity, monarchy, because it's a settled country. We also see there's unique historical events for the French, or dynamic historical events, 205. Some of the big nations have a lot of these, like the English have 233 historical events, as well as 31 unique content for England itself, but some nations have nothing. So for example, if we click on Baya, one of the most important nations in the world, actually, if you ask me, has 0 content. Why is that? Does Paradox secretly hate Moldova? Well, as a Moldova myself, I'm gonna say no, they don't. They just made a lot of content for this nation, but it just went missing, which begs the question, Wallachia, did you steal our content? Let me see. Oh my god, they did! 4 country bonuses, unbelievable. Yeah, that's right, buddy. That's right. If you're Romanian like I am, you probably want to start as Wallachia before you form Romania, because you get some flavor, including discipline +5, which is really difficult to get as most nations. That's basically the only good one. I just had to say it. I had to say it, okay? Since this video is going to explain a lot of things for beginners to Europa Universalis 5, I'm also going to suggest a few nations that you should start your first campaign as. Hungary is a really good pick because Hungary is a strong nation, both economically and militarily, so you would have to be pretty brain dead to lose as Hungary. Similarly, Bohemia is probably even stronger than Hungary, but you've got the Holy Roman Empire as an international organization that you're a part of, so it might be a little bit overwhelming for a first beginner to EU5. France, on the other hand, is the most overpowered nation in the game by far. You start with 38 subjects, and it is just ridiculous how easy you can expand and crush anyone around you. So again, good starter nation. Similarly, England is also a good starter nation, but I do recommend you abandon your holds in France, let the French do their thing, you hold on to your islands, build a strong navy so the French don't get to you, and you're gonna be set for the rest of the campaign. Bit to the south, also the Crown of Castile is super strong, and in case you're wondering, I've got videos for all of these nations. Make sure you check the description. Some of them are going to be unlisted videos. Check them out. I do also explain individually how to properly begin and have a successful campaign as all of these nations. I also want to add to this the Ottomans, but take note, the Ottomans start off a little bit smaller. They do get a lot of unique flavor that will get them super powerful, super fast, but this I would recommend to someone that already has some knowledge of Europa Universalis, such as someone that played EU4 or someone that has played some Paradox games beforehand, because it can also go pretty bad and you might end up just losing if you don't know at least the very basics. But hey, we're doing a basics video right now, so after you watch this video you will be able to play as the Beyliks of the Ottomans. So the first thing we want to do is familiarize ourselves with the screen itself, the UI, what everything represents, and what we should be doing before we even unpause the game, because we've got quite a long way to go before we unpause. If you don't have Ironman on, you can do the EU4 tutorial as long as you made sure you have missions enabled, otherwise you cannot do this either. Next up, we've got a lot of different icons that notify us of certain issues within the country. The green icons are things that we can instantly do. The yellow icons are issues that might be happening in the country that we might not have the option of instantly fixing, but it's good to know about these issues so we can fix them later down the line if when we have the chance to. At the top of the screen, we see the current estates within our country. Right now we've got 4 estates, and if we go to the F1 government tab, we see that these are the nobility, clergy, burgher, commoners, and the crown estate. So I lied to you, there's 5 estates actually if we add to the fray the crown. Altogether you've got 100% political power in your country, and you can see this power divided between the various estates, including the crown estate, which has 22% political power. Nobility has 44%, clergy 18, 7, and 8% for the other two. Altogether they add up and make 100%. More political power for an estate will give more debuffs usually. So for example, the nobility will be less taxed. It will push us towards aristocratic value, and it will give us more combat efficiency, which seems like a good thing, and it is a good thing, but it's not worth the extra minus 9% taxation. Being below 25% power for the estates means you can tax them more, so that's a good thing. With the crown is the opposite. Below 25% crown power, you get debuffs, whilst above 25% crown power, you get a lot of bonuses. Another thing to note is that the exact amount of crown power gives you the exact amount of trading. So if you've got 100 ducats from trade income in, you only get 22.01 ducats correlating with the crown power. You probably guessed it, as you progress in the campaign, you want to get as much crown power as possible so you get more bonuses, more income from trade, and just make the rest of the estates weaker. Having more power for the estates also means it's going to be more difficult to revoke privileges. If we hover over this, the base cost for privilege is actually 400, but it is multiplied by the power of that particular estate. So because there's 44% power for the nobility, it ends up with 149 revoke privilege, but because we only have 8 commoners power, it's 29 revoking the privilege for the commoners. Privileges also can give you different abilities for your estate, such as it allows this one, the burghers, to build roads in your country, but they usually also give you certain values that they push you towards. Centralization, for example, which is a good value you want to go for, so this privilege is perfect. You can click on the little plus button and then you can add more estate privileges. Go over them, it's pretty self-explanatory. The green usually means it gives a good thing, the red means it's a bad thing. Take note, every single privilege you give out will increase the satisfaction of the particular estate as well as the power of the estate. You want to have as weak as possible estates with as many privileges that give you bonuses. So for example, trade capacity and capital economy privilege is amazing, so we want to give this out. We also get a very little power compared to some other privileges, only 25% increase in power, so boom, give that out. But look here, every time you give out a privilege, it increases the satisfaction instantly of the estate that received the privilege, but it lowers the satisfaction of the other estates. So if we go to the other estates right now, this one went to 60%, whilst the commoners went to 48.9% because they're jealous of the burghers. You want to always keep at least 50% satisfaction for your estates, or they might go rebellious and you might have to fight a civil war because of it eventually. You also can instantly bribe the estates if you have the money, this money goes to that estate. It doesn't get lost, as well as you instantly increase the satisfaction by 10% every time that you bribe them. Certain privileges are just hardcore debuffs, like the monetary fiefs. It seems like a good one because it pushes us towards centralization, which is good, but it lowers the levy of the nobility, as well as it lowers the taxation of the nobility by 10%. So that means we can tax them 10% less. That's like trillions of dollars in modern economic terms. If you're more curious about what privileges to give out, if you want to get a more in-depth explanation of the estates in particular, I have an estates guide already done. Check the description below. It's a little bit longer, but it goes in detail about this particular part of the game, which you really need to know. In fact, all the other mechanics guides that I have in the description below go a lot more in detail about every aspect of what we're talking in this video today. So make sure after you watch this video, you go and watch all of those to become an EU5 master, and then tell your girlfriend how amazing and super good you are at the game. She's gonna be so impressed. She's gonna stop cheating on you with Todd. I swear to God, she will. I talked to Todd. Even he might start sleeping with you. In fact, that's real. Since we are on the government tab, we need to talk about a few more things that are very important, and one of them is your leader. We see right here, we are ruled by King Anjou Karoli, and he has different stats. He's got 66 admin, 61 diplo, and 43 military ability. If we hover over it, we see exactly what these abilities give us. For the admin ability, which is my personal favorite, you get proximity cost reduction, building cost reduction, crown power increase. So if you go to 100 of each of these abilities, you get a lot of amazing bonuses that will make your country better. That's why in general, you want your leader of the country to have as high ability as possible in all three of those fields. There's also traits that leaders can accrue. So this guy is a bold fighter, which means armies will get plus 20% initiative. He's Midas touch, so you get monthly prosperity in all your provinces. So this affects the whole country, by the way. And he's cruel, which means that he has the option of executing characters. That is a unique ability. Not everyone has that option, by the way, but unfortunately it lowers the satisfaction equilibrium of your estates by 2.5. And speaking of, quick note, satisfaction equilibrium is the value towards which your satisfaction pushes to. If it's 65 and you're sitting at 60 with this one, it will slowly push towards 65 at a rate of 0.2 change monthly. If it's 40%, it will go down towards 40% from 60% at the similar rate. Also should probably have mentioned that government reforms are the equivalent of the crown estate for privileges. You have a limited amount of government reforms. At the start, most nations have 2, but this can change. You can have more or less based on unique flavor. So if we play as the Byzantines, they have 3 starting government reforms, as they have an extra one from the Byzantine law, which is a legal code that allows them an extra government reform. There's other ways of getting government reforms increased, including you have for every single age an extra advance that allows you +1 possible government reforms. The first one you will unlock once you've embraced the Renaissance institution and you've researched the Renaissance thought advance. Once that's done, you can get your next government reform. As for the reforms themselves, there's a lot of them, so make sure you decide to go for whichever reform best suits your country. If you want to learn more about which one's the better or the worst one, again, watch my estates video. I talk about this in detail there as well. Some other important things to take note from in the government tab is the fact that you can change your capital by clicking on this button. And I'm saying this because it's not very intuitive. A lot of people have asked me this. So it will cost a certain amount of money and 20 stability. This is scaled with the amount of money your country makes, so keep that in mind. And once you click it, you can change it to other locations that are suitable. Where your capital is located is one of the most important things in the game. If you're a naval-based nation, you want to have a capital somewhere with access to the sea, so a location right next to a sea tile that is as centered as possible around your nation. So in our case, we've got it in Constantinople in this save, and because of that, our core area has pretty high control, around 100 control in most of it, or 80 to 90 in the other adjacent ones. But more importantly, we see that we still have 90 control in Rhodos, 95 in Marmarida, 81 even in Cyprus. Why is that? Well, because we're a naval-based nation, so control over sea tiles is easier if we've got 100% maritime presence in our sea tiles. That will significantly reduce the penalty penalty of proximity via sea tile. We'll get into the control bit a little bit later more. Just to make a point about the capital location, a sea-based location if you're a sea nation, or if you're a land-based nation like Russia is or Hungary is, then have it as central to wherever your landmass is, because if we go to the control map mode, we see the area around the capital is about 100 to 90 control everywhere, and it equally distributes around our capital. If we had our capital in St. Petersburg, our control would basically be non-existent around the southern parts because it would be too much of a distance between St. Petersburg and that area. So ideally, once we conquer all of the eastern Russian parts, we want to have our capital somewhere in the center, even more center than Russia. Probably around this area here would be the best spot for the capital, as it would give more control by the Caucasus and towards Siberia too. There is a dedicated control and proximity part of this video if you want to go to that timestamp, but if you do, you're going to miss out on even more important stuff, and I'm going to know you clicked off and you didn't watch this part, because then you're going to ask in the comment section, oh Ludi, what about this and that? And I explained it, and you didn't watch the video, and I'm going to get mad. You don't want me to get mad, do you now, buddy? You know what happens if I get mad? Nothing. I'm probably going to also answer your question, even though it's in the video. God damn it! You need to stop doing this to me. I got low blood sugar. Back to the government tab. Some other important things to note from here is the government type is illustrated here, and there's multiple types of government. We've got monarchies, republics, whores, theocracies, and even tribes. Currently, these are the only types of government, and each of them have unique content. Playing as a monarchy is a completely different experience from playing as a horde, for example. And the third icon tells us the government rank. Based on the rank that you have, you will get different bonuses. So for the kingdom rank, which is the third tier, we get these particular bonuses. I'm not going to name them out because you can read again. If you go to form new nation, you actually see all the ranks. So the first rank, which is the county, the lowest rank, only allows you to sign alliances and get one extra rival. Then duchy increases the amount of bonuses, as well as it unlocks the ability to guarantee nations and increases the amount of rivals you can get. Kingdoms can support rebels in other countries and increase again the amount of rivals, whilst empires double down on everything, and you can get 4 rivals, as well as you can get an extra cabinet seat. That's right, you get more members of cabinet if you play as an empire. In order to become a specific rank, you will have different requirements here. Take note, in the case of the empire, if you're a Catholic nation, only the Holy Roman Emperor can become empire rank, which is an elected rank dished out by the electors of the Holy Roman Empire of Brandenburg, Bohemia, Palatinate, Mainz, Trier, and Köln. These 6 nations decide the future of who becomes the most valuable German bachelor. Countries that are not Catholic, though, can indeed become empires. They don't have that restriction, so that means Orthodox, Sunnis, or Muvas, whatever you might be, you can become an empire as long as you fulfill these particular requirements here. Mostly the population is the big issue, the prestige, and of course you need to have the money. One thing to note here though, and I switched over to Brandenburg because this is very important, if you're playing within the Holy Roman Empire that I talked about earlier, you cannot switch your rank to kingdom or emperor. There's only one emperor, the Holy Roman Emperor. Kingdoms is a bit more tricky because we do have the Kingdom of Bohemia, and we can become a kingdom if we say, for example, form Prussia. So there are some specific ways of becoming kingdoms, but most nations start off as a county or a duchy. If you are a county and you want to become a duchy, the only way you can do that if you go to the form new nation is not only do you need to have the primary culture, you need to have the prestige and the money, but you need to ask permission from the emperor. So you go to see who's the emperor. Right now that is the Duchy of Upper Bavaria. You click on the Duchy of Upper Bavaria, you go to imperial action, and you ask for ducal rights. They will most likely accept you becoming a duchy if you have the right relations with them. Usually the only issue is the prestige. So if you manage somehow to get 25 prestige, you can pretty much become a duchy instantly in the case of Brandenburg. You also see on this screen who is your consort as well as your heir, and take note, there's a little button next to the heir here. If you click that little button, you can change whatever succession law you have. So if you don't want your heir to be the one that leads the country because he has really bad ability and you want someone else, well, you can change your succession law. So say for example you do matrilineal non-exclusive. That means that you allow females as well to become your heir and become the next leader of the country. You also allow siblings of ruler of female line also to become the next leader of the country. In essence, just take your time, read everything. It tells you exactly what type of succession law it is. It's not rocket rocket science. What you do need to know from this though is that every law you change here will cost you 50 stability and 50 legitimacy. Now these are the values here: stability of the country and legitimacy of the country, which we'll talk about in a couple of moments. Before anything else, we're going to click on values from the government tab. Every country starts with different values. Values basically shape your nation from the inside, and you have the option of going towards left or right on each individual value. If you hover in the middle of them, you see what your current push is. So in our case, for centralization versus decentralization, we have 50 push towards decentralization, which gives us these particular bonuses. If we hover over decentralization itself, we see that at maximum 100 decentralization, we would get a state satisfaction plus 5, loyalty of subjects plus 20, as well as some malices. Similarly, if we hover over centralization, we get 50% crown power, which we definitely want. Proximity cost minus 10%, which is extremely important. So in general, you want to go towards centralization as pretty much any nation in the game, and most nations starts decentralized, so that's one thing you need to change. It's the same for all the values. Some are good, some are bad. Watch my values guide after you watch this video to get a better understanding of what values you should be going for. Things to note here is that you have a passive monthly push towards your values based off of the privileges you gave out, the laws you have enacted, the average control and development in the country. So right now we're pushing towards decentralization by 0.23. If we were to remove this privilege, the communal lands, which gives 0.20 push towards decentralization, so we go back to country and we find that in the commoners tab here, we right click on it. It's going to cost us 29 stability, and it will make the state 40% less satisfied, which means they will be rebellious because they now have 8% satisfaction. But that removed that particular privilege, so we're only drifting 0.04 or 0.3 towards decentralization every month. If we go to country and we go to our cabinet, we can assign a cabinet action to change societal values towards centralization. We can assign a cabinet member also, say Mr. David over here. And if we go back to values, we're now drifting towards centralization by 0.14 every month. So this has to get rid of the 50 decentralization. So it's going to go slowly until it reaches 14 centralization. It stops at 14 because the monthly drift determines the cap of that particular value. So it cannot go over 14 centralization with the monthly passive push, but you can increase that from calling the parliament and going for parliament debates that can give you more centralization, from going for events that give you more centralization, or if you have missions enacted, missions can also give you centralization push. And it's the same for every value. That's just done as an example. Now, since we did talk a little bit about the cabinet, let's actually click on the cabinet and let's assign a second cabinet member. This was going to be a member of our royal family. So the way the cabinet works is every action in the game passively is happening in the background, but the cabinet actively can double down on those actions and make it happen a lot faster. If we didn't assign to increase centralization, it probably would have still happened if we revoked some more privileges, or if we went to our estates and we gave out, say, privileges to the clergy that pushed us towards centralization, right? We can still do that and it's still going to double down on it. So now we're moving by 0.19 towards centralization, which increases our cap to 19 centralization. But cabinet members did that actively and is allowing us, as long as we keep the cabinet member doing that particular action, he will double down and make it happen a lot faster. There's a lot of different cabinet actions, and every cabinet action will have an active impact on your country, and it is of 3 different types. There's admin, which is the little scroll, diplo, which is the little bird, and military, which is the 2 swords. There's also a number next to it. That number is the ability of your particular cabinet member. So every cabinet member has 3 different abilities, much like your king. These abilities will determine how efficiently they do their particular cabinet action. So if we assign this guy to do develop a province, he will have 65 abilities, so he's going to do a pretty decent job. If we assign him to stabilize the country, he only has 30 abilities, so he's going to do a pretty bad job at it. But still, he's going to do it, so it's not like it's a bad thing. You can assign him to whatever you want. It's just better to assign a cabinet member with higher ability in a particular field to that particular field if you can. Now, let's say we want to assign this guy to assimilate pops in our culture, right? Once we click that, we have the option of deciding what is the targeted pop. So we could click on Hungarian, but we're not, because we don't want to be that guy. We're going to click on Transylvanian, and we can decide to assimilate any province within our country to that particular culture. This will actively give us plus 40 flat assimilation speed. So say we want to assimilate Turda. So now why does it say plus 58 instead of plus 40? Well, we have a lot of different modifiers here, including the diplomatic ability of our king plays into it, conciliatory, which is one of our values. The fact that we are over our cultural capacity lowers the efficiency of any cabinet action as well, because we're below 25 crown power. Again, it lowers it, and the skill of this individual cabinet member again increases it. Only 18. If he had 100, it would increase it by 50%, so we would get a lot more pops assimilated flat every month. Now, if we click on any location within this particular province and we go to demographics, we see that monthly assimilation right now is plus 58, but we have a base value for every country of plus 1. So even if we don't by default do the assimilation, it will happen by itself over many years. We're just increasing it 50 times fold pretty much right now. There's other things, of course, that will play into this, including the lack of control in that province, the literacy of clergy, the amount of marketplaces, which is a building that we have in that location, our value of spiritualist versus humanist, and the fact that Hungarian is the dominant culture increases by 50% too. Take note, we are assimilating to a non-Hungarian culture. Ideally, you don't want to do that. I'm just trolling right here. You go to your society tab, which is the F4 tab, and you want to assimilate pops to a culture that is either your primary culture, like Hungarian is, or you want to assimilate them to accepted cultures, which we don't have right now. We've got only tolerated cultures, including the Transylvanians are a tolerated culture. We're going to talk more about the cultures in general in a few moments. Let's finish with the cabinets though. Some important things to note here. You want to be promoting cabinet members to head of cabinet, as that will again double down and give an extra 25% head of cabinet's efficiency to whatever interaction they're doing. So once we unpause and 1 month has passed, this is going to go up to 68. If you don't see it happening instantly, wait for a month. It will happen the next month most likely. There you go. It went up to 71% actually now, for whatever other reason that might have influenced it. Oh, it's because of the crown power increased. And that leads us to the estates. Our crown power just shot up to 29%, which gives us a lot of different bonuses, including more trade income and lowered costs, such as lower the cost of revoking privileges. As you can see, they're cheaper now to revoke. Why is that? Well, if we hover over this, we have a member of our cabinet that is a part of the royal family, namely Andrew Kalmar. We see that illustrated by the little crown icon here. He is also a crown head of the cabinet that gives another 25%. So if we were to have both cabinet members a part of the royal family, which we cannot because we don't have any other royal family member that qualifies to be a cabinet member, but if we had both, we would have altogether 25%, so 12.5 times 2 plus another 25% from crown head of the cabinet. That is a very easy way of increasing your crown power early on. You can do the same by assigning a member of your crown in charge of the entirety of your army, and similarly in charge of the entirety of your navy. So now if we wait for 1 more month to pass, as the Byzantines that only have 5% crown power, it's going to shoot up to 13% because we've got 2 family members in charge of the entire army and navy. And yes, bankruptcy obviously lowers your crown power by 90% when you declare bankruptcy, and then it slowly declines all the way to 0 once bankruptcy has dissipated after 5 years. There's a lot of other things that go into that, but that's the main thing. The last thing we need to talk about from this screen is the laws. The laws again affect your country significantly. Changing a law to another one that you like more will cost you stability, so before you change your law, think about it carefully and then decide not to do it because you don't want to waste your stability. You normally want to change laws by using the parliament. The parliament can be conveyed every 60 months. It says here greater than 59 months, which means 60 months. That means you should be able to summon your first parliament around 1340, as most nations. When you do that, you can decide which location you want the parliament in, and then you've got different debates. Some of them will have higher, some of them will have lower starting success chance. So for your first one, you want to go, say for example, for increased ties with neighbors, which has a lot of success chance, so it means we're likely to pass this. The way the passing works is if it's 50.1% or above, it passes. If it's 49.9 or 1%, it fails. Doesn't matter the percentage, it's just about if it's above or below 50%. Simple as that. We've got some issues you can do with the parliament, including we can get a fabrication of claim on our neighbor. So we can say click on Poland, click on the desired province, and then we get a claim with which we can attack Poland without having to use a no CB war. Other things we can do is raise taxes for 1 year and ask for larger levies. I never do these 2 interactions because they're never worth it. 50% for that is just way too expensive. Fourth one is change change law. So if we can click on this, we go to whichever law we want, and then we can choose to change that legislation for free, or better yet, for just 50 support in the current issue, because we lose the support, but we don't need to pay the stability to change the legislation. Some of the laws you want to change early on is go from traditional distribution of power to favor the ruler, because it increases your crown power and allows you to tax your estates more. You want to change from de jure laws tradition to blood, so you can integrate provinces a little bit faster, and from aristocratic court to itinerant court, which gives proximity cost for land minus 10%, which means you get more control out of your provinces. The parliament agendas will allow you to increase the support in exchange for certain things you will allow your estates to do, such as push you towards specific values like serfdom in this case for the cost of 5 prestige, or you can even change policies. It will cost some stability, and a lot of these are not worth it, so be very careful. Also careful when you have to give out privileges. It's not usually worth giving any privileges just to increase agenda strength. Next up is the economic tab, which you can press F2 also to get to. Very, very important here. This is how you make money in your country. So first you want to do is you want to automate the tax rate for all of your estates. The AI is actually pretty good when it comes to automating the taxes. In essence, what it does is it will tax as much as it can up until 50% satisfaction. So even if it might be able to tax a lot, the commoners, it will tax it less. So if we unpause, it's going to go down to only 29% tax, which will allow the commoners to keep a 50% satisfaction equilibrium. One thing you cannot automate is the minting. So what you're going to do is you're going to mint up until 0.0. You don't want to gain inflation, because inflation will make everything more expensive in your country, and you don't want to have inflation because of that. Taking loans is from the estates. They don't come out of thin air. So if your estates have money, you can take loans from the estates, which you will have to pay back, and there's a 10% interest. So be very careful if you need to take loans. I recommend you don't unless you need to. If you hover over the estates, you see how much money they make, how much money they spend on goods, as well as what kind of building they're planning to build, such as the toll castle. That is a building good for the estates, not so much for you. Navy maintenance you want to leave always on, because you want your navies to increase your maritime presence. If you have a lot of sea tiles, if you don't have sea tiles, it doesn't make any difference because you don't have a navy. Army maintenance, up to you. I recommend keeping it on. Fort maintenance you can keep at 50%, saves you a little bit of money. And just so you know, there is a fort limit. If you go over that fort limit, you will pay extra for these fortifications. When you go to war, you want to max out your fort maintenance, so it's a little bit more difficult for the enemy to take a fortification. So keep this also on automated. The AI does a good job at automating this too. You want to cramp your cost of court to maximum. Diplomatic spending, only crank it up if you need to get more diplomats. By default, you get 0.10 diplomats every month, but if you do actions such as improve relations, it will lower diplomatic gain by 0.05 per opinion improvement, or if you build a spy network, it will lower it by 0.10, so keep that in mind. The cap also is determined by you spending for your diplomacy. So if we go max spending, we're getting 0.4 a month, as well as we have a cap of 5 diplomats, but it is insanely expensive. Yes, it also makes your subjects more loyal, but it is insanely expensive, so it's up to you if you want to do that. Similarly here, cost of court is very expensive, but after you've reached 100% legitimacy, it will cost significantly less to maintain the cost of court. Having 100% legitimacy prevents disasters, makes your pops less likely to join rebellions, and it gives you crown power plus 10%. So you want to have this at 100 all the time. While stability, it's good to have it as high as possible, but if you crank it up to maximum, it will be super expensive. And one of the main things of stability is that it will make population promote faster for different jobs. We also have trade income. So if we go to the trading tab, I recommend you do not automate the whole tab. You only automate the market. So you click it here. Never click this. You want to click here on the market. That way the market decides what are the best trades. And honestly, for a beginner, even someone with about 400 or 500 hours, keep it as this. That allows you to do some manual trades. So for example, if you need specific goods, like I need some fiber cloth or whatever, that is fine cloth, not fiber cloth. That way we set up a trade that increases the import of fine cloth from Geneva, and we can also lock that trade in, and we can unlock it whenever we don't want it to be set in stone. If it's unlocked, the AI can decide to cancel that trade route. If it's locked, it will never cancel it unless you want it to be canceled. Markets shows you all the markets that your locations are a part of, as well as the trade capacity. The trade capacity is what decides how much trade you can do to and from your markets, and that gives you money. So because of our current trade capacity, we're getting 8.44 ducats a month, which is of course influenced by our crown power. So that's 24% trade profit. You always can create your own market. I recommend that you do have your own market. Most important to take note of in markets, you want to go to the market screen. screen at the bottom here, and you can hover over the market. You can see what the main shortages and the main surpluses are. So you've got a lot of gold, a lot of livestock. You can trade this off to other markets to make money off of it, and you can import from other markets these particular goods to again make money off of it. So if we click on the market, we see the trade screen here. We have all the goods. You can filter by supply, by demand, by goods balance. So you can do 1, 2, and then we see all the unbalanced. We have a few options. We can build that particular good. So we can build carpentry guild in our country. I recommend you build these in provinces that have high control, and we'll get to that in a few seconds. That means your capital most likely would be your best province to build it in. That will be just 100% profit right there. We also have the option of importing from another markets if we have the trade capacity. So make sure you do have trade capacity in order to do these new trades. Going back, we also have the option of expanding RGO. RGOs are goods produced by locations. Each location has a specific RGO. So in this case here, we can produce fur in specific locations that have that as an RGO. These are the 3 ways of increasing your supply for goods in case you're lacking. Similarly, if we have a lot of excess, we go export, and then we export to whatever other markets if we have the trade capacity. Don't worry, I'm going to talk about RGOs and buildings a little bit more in detail in a couple of seconds, because next is the production tab. So the production tab is how you make your money aside from trade. Every location is a part of a market, and you see at the top the market selected, but you can also remove market filters, so that way you have all the locations in your country available to be building in. It's not limited to certain locations within a market anymore. You want to always automate your production methods because the AI does a good job at selecting the best production method for your buildings. Don't bother with this, just automate it. Automate construction, I don't recommend, but if you're super new, you could do it until you learn the game a little bit better. However, not automating it means that you get to actually learn by doing it yourself. So that's probably the smarter idea. We also have here the employment system. Click on this. By default, everyone's got first come first serve employment system. That gives us traditional economy push. You want to go for most profitable first, which gives us capital economy value push. If you do this early on, it only costs 10 stability, and for the rest of the campaign we get more push for that particular value. That is a better value than traditional economy. You do start as the Hungarians with a lot of traditional economy, so you want to start making the move towards capital economy as soon as you can. Back to the production tab, we can filter the buildings that we can build in our country by the different pops. I like to do that. You also can filter by card display, so it tells you the type of building that it is. If you like this more, go for this. I have my own preference, you have yours, so I'm going to keep my list display, and I'm going to click on nobles to see what noble buildings I can build, and you can hover over and it tells you what bonuses or debuffs it gives you. You can click on the cleric buildings, the burgher buildings, the laborer buildings, the soldier, peasant. Before we show you what exactly to be building, you can also check my dedicated building and economy guide in the description below. If that's not out, write down in the comment section because it will come out eventually. Just remind me so I can put it as an unlisted video. Now remember, we also talked about RGOs. If we go to the bottom of the screen, the raw material map mode, we see every location has an RGO that it produces. So this location is producing silver. The way that RGOs work, once you have 1,000 people employed in that particular mine or whatever farm or whatever it might be, because there's different types of course, it will produce 1 unit of that particular good. So we've got 2 out of 9 maximum silver mines here. It's got a full 2,000 people employed, and you can only employ laborers or slaves, and slaves only if it is allowed by your religion or your laws or whatever. So for the Christians, we cannot employ slaves and RGOs because it doesn't allow us because of our religion. So you've got the default amount, 1 per level, which means 2 because we've got 2 levels, and then you got serfdom. One of our values in traditional economy increases this by a little bit. One of our policies lowers it by 5%. So the end result is 2.4 units of silver from these 2 levels of RGO. Similarly, it's the same here for gold or lumber. We've got 2 levels of lumber. If we increase the levels, we get more lumber created, and then we get more output. We also have a different amount for profit. So profit is shown here as 0.13. This is based off of the demand and supply. If there's a lot of demand, you'll get more money for that particular good. If there's less demand, you'll get less money for it. And if you've got, say for example, buildings that are not profitable, that is because there's not enough demand. So how do we make them profitable? You make sure that there's other buildings built in your country that will require an input of that particular good. So say for example, we are going to need tailors guilds, right? Tailors guilds, we build one in Buda. Now that particular tailors guild will use, in our case, wool to create fine cloth, and you can also enhance that by using alum and dyes to create more fine cloth. So that means we now have a demand demand for dyes, for alum, and for wool because of that one building. If you're not making money with a building, it means that you need to make other buildings that use up the good that that building's making, or you need to export it. So we go back to our market, click on our market, and see we can go around the adjacent markets if you want to, and you can see what other market requires those particular goods that you have an excess of. Or if you're really new and you don't want to bother with that, you go to your economy tab, trading, and then it should tell you here most profitable for import as well as for export when it comes down to goods. But that's just not properly taking advantage of the mechanic. It is simple though. It's not always the best option, so it's your choice if you want to do that though. One more thing to take note of in this interface is that for specific markets, we've got different input goods missing. So right now we're missing fine cloth. So you want to build fine cloth because it's going to give you a lot of profit. We got population goods needs. So you can expand the RGOs to increase the supply of these particular goods. That way our needs are fulfilled and our population is satisfied. They're not pissed off with us and they're going to be less rebellious. They're going to give us more control in our provinces if they're more satisfied. The third tab in production is the food tab, and it shows you in every individual province the amount of food produced. If you've got a shortage of food, you can either fix it by increasing the RGO if there is RGOs that produce food, or you can build buildings that will increase the food production or percentage production of food. And the third option, again, you go to your market and you import food from other markets by setting up trade routes. So you can find, for example, livestock, which produces 8 food per 1 livestock, and you can import livestock from adjacent markets. That's right. If we go back to our raw material map mode, we see that different foodstuffs produce different amount of food. So livestock is 8. Wheat also produces 8 units of food per 1 unit of wheat. Wool produces 5 units of food per 1 unit of wool. And this is a reference to the sheep, right? Wool is not just the wool that you use for clothing. It's also the sheep. That's why it produces food. Fish produces also 5. Legumes produces 5. Wild game produces only 3.5. So keep that in mind. Different RGOs produce different amounts of food. You want to go for the one that produces the most if you're starving. The next tab is the society tab. We've got very important things here. Most importantly though is our cultures. So every nation, if we go to the cultural map mode, has different cultures in the nation. Your primary culture, in our case Hungarian, means that these are the pops that we can rely on the most. These are the pops we can raise as levies, the pops that we can employ without issues, that don't have penalties in any way, shape, or form. There's other levels though. We've got discriminated pops, which we cannot employ. They get the satisfaction debuff, so they're pissed off with us all the time. What we can do to make these particular unsatisfied, discriminated pops happier is we can tolerate them. So we see here the little icon. This is the tolerated culture icon. So the Kumans are tolerated. That is because there's 1% Kumans in our country, so we can tolerate them. If we have 2.5% or above of a particular culture that is tolerated, we can upgrade them to accepted level. It will cost us 5% prestige doing so, but once they are accepted pops will also be raised as levies, and we can use them same way we use our primary pops. There's no difference between primary and accepted culture pops. Idea is you want to have as many accepted pops as possible, but there is a cultural capacity. So we see right now we've got a cultural capacity of 2.0, but we have 2.6 used up. That's giving us penalties because we're over the cultural capacity by 0.6. We get less cultural tradition, less cultural influence, and efficiency of cabinet is reduced as well. So what we need to do now is to figure out which one of these cultures we need to abandon. I think it's going to be the Serbians. Every culture that we have will cost different amounts of cultural capacity to tolerate or to accept. That's based off of the culture group. So if we have similar culture groups, it will be less expensive. So if we go to Slovak, which is in the Carpathian culture group that includes our culture, it's a lot less expensive, but it's still more expensive because it's a different language. They're also Slavic culture group, so accepting them would cost us 1.31 and tolerating 0.43. By contrast, the Zekulars, which are in the same Magyar and Carpathian culture group, as well as they speak the same language as us, they only cost 0.15 to turn into an accepted culture. So we can accept Zekulars right now, and it only put us over a little bit more. And from now on, because we've accepted them, we can also raise levies from their particular provinces. And more importantly, every province that you have can have 3 different ranks. We can have them as conquered provinces, like the lands here in the Eastern Roman Empire. If they're conquered, they lower maximum control by 10%, assimilation conversion speed, and so on. There's a lot of negative things to this. Next level is the integrated level. level. So once we integrate a province, it will give +5 max control, but still lower assimilation speed and increase separatism. So we want to make our provinces core provinces. So we've got most of our country as core provinces, which increases max control by 20% and allows us to get vision even when it is occupied by an enemy. But how do we make our provinces cores? Well, we need to make sure the province has at least 50% accepted or primary culture pops. So here, because we have 50% Hungarians, this integrated province automatically becomes a core province of ours. Same here, because we've made Zekulis an accepted pops and they're above 50% of this location, it will become a core location. It's also scripted for some nations to just start with all of their or most of their provinces as a core provinces. So the Hungarians should not technically have most of this as cores because they're not 50% accepted or primary, but they do start with them as cores just to make Hungary a little bit more beginner friendly. So keep that in mind, which also makes it weird that this is not a core province. Let's see what the culture there is. So this is Laz, 86%. If we were to make Laz an accepted culture, it would be a core, but Laz is not possible because there's not even 1% to make them tolerated, let alone 2.5% to make them an accepted culture. Take note also, if you unaccept or untolerate by right clicking on it, so we remove Transylvanian as tolerated culture, it will lower the cultural capacity down to 2.42 out of 2, but it will piss off the Transylvanians. So these pops are going to be very, very upset with you now as consequence, lowering their satisfaction significantly, which will make them a lot more rebellious. Back to the society tab, we also have the religion. Your religion again determines how satisfied, happy, or rebellious your population is. Certain religions are accepted more or less. So if you go to the religious breakdown, Orthodoxy is pretty much accepted by Catholics and vice versa, even though it's a heretical religion, whilst Judaism is not accepted, or Sunnis or anyone else is pretty much unaccepted by Catholics and vice versa. It depends on the religion. You need to navigate from each individual religion to figure this out. We got holy sites too, which can give certain bonuses to those particular locations. And in general, every religion has their own unique mechanics. So you want to first check what your religion gives you. If you want to change your religion to another religion, you have the option of doing so if you are allowing this from your game rules. So keep that in mind. And it will cost 50 stability, as well as it will have some impact on your country. You might lose alliances if you piss off your fellow Catholics if you change to Orthodoxy. The people tab show us the actual pops in the country, as well as how literate these pops are, the needs, whether they have all the needs met, and how happy they are. So right now, everyone's very unsatisfied with us because remember, we've revoked the privilege earlier, so now the peasants don't like us. We also have the rebels illustrated. If you click own rebels only, turn that off, you see the actual rebels. I'm not sure why that's on by default, but you have to click it off to see what potential rebels would spawn. If you hover over the rebel, you see the location that would potentially join the rebellion against you, the dynasties you see, whatever you have in your country available right now, and how many members of that dynasty exist, and then the characters as well. You might have characters that you might be able to hire as cabinet members, as generals of different roles. For example, if you want to make this lady a cabinet member, you might have the option, you might not have the option. It's very dependent on a few other things. You usually can hover over requirements to see what determines that. You can marry your characters, and by marrying characters, you will have kids made, and having kids made will get you more characters. Other important things from the society tab include the primary culture, which has tradition and influence. Tradition is the defensive value, influence is the attack value of your culture. So when you're assimilating a culture, if they have less tradition than your influences, will be a lot faster for you to assimilate them. Similarly, if you're annexing a subject whose culture has less tradition than your culture's influence, then you will get a bonus to assimilation. Right now, our Greek culture in this particular save has 4,500 influence compared to the Levantine culture of our subjects, which has only 37 tradition. So we've got a lot more influence than their tradition, meaning we can annex them a lot faster. Other things to note in the society tab is your primary culture for your country, your language spoken, and language also has a power that can determine a few things such as the amount of monthly research that you get. Your artists also have specific work of arts that they can create, and these individual works of art will give you different bonuses. It might not seem like a lot, just 0.18% local assimilation speed, but they stack up. So as you progress in the campaign, look at this. We've got got hundreds of works of art that increase our various bonuses, which allow us to assimilate faster, convert faster, promote faster, get institutions faster, and so on. Next tab you need to know about is the diplomatic tab. So we've got a few important things here, such as the diplomatic capacity. The alliances you have, the subjects you might have, will cost you diplomatic capacity. You can increase your diplomatic capacity or lower it depending on your diplomatic spending. Your diplomatic reputation affects how other nations trust you. More diplomatic reputation means they trust you more, less means they trust you less, and it's affected by a few things. You can manage your subjects here. Main thing you can do is decide what kind of military stance they have during war. Either you want to have them attached to your armies or you want them to be aggressive and attack by themselves. It's your choice. You can create custom subjects or historical subjects, so we can release the Duchy of Transylvania. A historical subject will have a preset language, culture, and religion, whilst a custom subject will just take the culture and the religion of the province where it's created. So we can create a subject that is a vassal here, give it to one of our courtiers, and that particular vassal now has Hungarian and Catholicism as its primary religion and culture. That's because this particular province is majority Hungarian and majority Catholic, despite having some minorities in there. When you're expanding in Europa Universalis 5, you really just want to use a subject as much as possible, because the big problem is you're not going to have that many provinces that are integrated, and if they're not integrated, they're going to be considered conquered provinces, which give you a lot of debuffs such as max control reduction, assimilation, and conversion speed reduction. So what we do is we create custom subjects as we're expanding, and in our case, in this particular save, we've got Thessaly as a custom subject. It is a Greek primary culture nation with Sunni. That is because we went to diplomatic and we enforced our religion on them. We can also enforce the culture, but by not enforcing the culture, what we can do is we can improve our cultural opinion with their primary culture if they're the leader of that particular culture. So what does that mean? If we grab a lot of Greek provinces, which we have, and we divide the Greek provinces that we took from the old Byzantines, we give them out to our subjects. The subject that has the highest amount of Greek pops will also be the cultural leading nation for that particular culture. Good example here with the Cypriots. They are the leading nation for their particular culture, which is Poitevin. And if we go to the cultural makeup, they already started converting everything to Poitevin, which is pretty annoying. But because they're the leading nation of Poitevin, we can use 50 favors to improve cultural opinion with the Poitevin culture, whilst with our subjects, we don't use favors. We use liberty desire to enforce that improvement of cultural opinion. I actually cannot do it in my run right now because I've just done it a few moments ago, so it just disappeared, the button. By creating different subjects after you conquer lands, these subjects, if we go to the integration map mode, will integrate the provinces for us. So after we are ready to annex the subjects, we will also get those provinces that they integrated as our integrated provinces. We've just created right now the Bulgarian and the Serbian subjects, so they haven't even started integrating anything. Take note, because they are a different religion, they have really bad relations with us. Vardar views Sunni countries with -70 relations, so if we were to turn them from Orthodoxy to our religion, Sunni, by enforcing the religion, the relations go up to 103 because they don't have that religion penalty anymore. So in general, as you're expanding, you want to create these subjects, you want to have them change to your religion. You don't necessarily need to make them your culture unless you want to. The difference would be that if they are your culture, they might start converting provinces to your culture also, but it's not a guarantee. They might also return to the previous culture if it is a better culture with higher cultural influence than yours. Or if it's a dead culture like, I don't know, let's look at Turkoman, then they probably will stay Turkish because Turkoman doesn't have too much cultural influence. Their cultural influence and tradition is 18 and 12, which is basically nothing. But that means you will not be able to improve cultural opinion from your subjects' interaction. You can only improve cultural opinion once every 50 years with your subjects, though, so keep that in mind before you decide which culture to improve with. Make sure it's a culture that you want to make an accepted culture. So in our case, we want to make Greeks accepted, and we lowered the cost to accept them by 1 point something already by making them neutral opinion of us. If we improve their opinion more, then it's going to be even cheaper to accept them, so we can have all the Greek provinces as core provinces once we integrate them. Another thing to note here is that you want to also diversify your subjects. The difference between vassals and fiefdoms, the main difference is that vassals are led by one of your characters that you assign. Fiefdoms are led by your leader directly, as well as fiefdoms integrate provinces faster after you give them provinces compared to vassals. And also, if we hover over the liberty desire, we see that the country strength of all vassals is added up together versus the overlord, whilst that is not the case when it comes to fiefdom. They weigh their strength individually against us, which means that you're not going to have as many disloyal fiefdoms. But the truth is, I like vassals still, even with all of that, because I like to have the 20% institution spread. So it's really your choice if you need institution spread or not. That's also going to come into it. And also take note, right now, look at this. We're only getting minus 0.7 loyalty decrease from having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vassals, which is not that much of a penalty. And speaking of, they also don't take that much diplomatic capacity, because the diplomatic capacity they take individually is based on the relative power aside from the base value, and that can go down if they have the same religion as you, the same dialect as you. Also in the diplomatic tab, and I'm speaking a bit earlier with this, but if you ever want to have an international organization, put at the bottom of the screen here, you go to organizations, you click on any of them, say the Ilkhanat, and then whilst you're in that particular tab, you hold control and assign it to 1, 2, 3, or whatever tab you want to assign it to, and then you always have that international organization set up down there. Just press 1 on your keyboard afterwards and you can bring it up. It's the same for everything. You can assign your army, say control 2 for the navy, army. You can even do a country if you want. So you can right click on this country, control 3, and then every time we press 3 on our keyboard, we bring up the pop-up for Bulgaria. It works like this for any single thing you want to assign, and I consider this part of the diplomatic play, so that's why I added in this part of the video. Also from the diplomacy tab, you can see the known countries, the organization. So if you're curious about the Tatar yoke, you can click on that organization. It's going to show you on the map where it is, the actions that they have, as well as the members of that organization. You also can see the organizations that you are a part of at the top here, such as the Hungarian Croatian Crown and the Catholic Church. Every organization has their own unique mechanics, such as in this case the doctrines, the papal bulls, the saints, holy sites, and members. If we go to the actions tab, we see all the various diplomatic actions, be it friendly, hostile, covert, economic actions that you can do, and certain nations might have unique actions. You also can have subject actions, and there's a lot of them. You can, for an example with our Bosnian subject here, change the court language. We can change their culture, their religion. If we click on them, go to country tab, we see that they are a different culture, different religion, have a different court language, and this actually influences a lot of things. If they were to have the same court language, for example, they would have better relations of us. So we can go ahead and we can go to our diplomatic tab, or we can right click on the country itself, diplomacy, and then we can enforce our court language. They do get minus 15 loyalty to overlord, but by enforcing the court language, we get plus 10 same court language opinion modifier, which means they have 70 opinion that resets again after 1 month. Similarly, we can use them to spread our religion, so we can enforce religion. It will piss them off a lot though, so they're going to be disloyal for quite some time, but they will make them Catholic rather than whatever religion they are. Take note, certain interactions might not appear over here. So for example, we don't have in the diplomacy tab the ability to create diplomatic vassals, but if we individually right click and open country panel for say Murom, we have the ability to ask them to become our fiefdom, or we can ask them to become our vassal. So that is only available to us here, and it's not shown in the actual diplomatic tab because it's not possible right now since we have less relations with them. So what we could do is we can go to the economy tab, we can offer them market preferential treatment, and that's going to increase their relations above 150 with us. So after 1 month has passed, we can go back and we can ask them to become our vassal. Boom, now we just expanded, and if we unpause, they also get our map color or a similar map color to ours. So take note, some interactions might not be seen here. You would have to be careful with that and check individually with each nation if that's an option for you to do or not. Also, if we were to ask for military access in EU5, you have to buy it. So if we want to purchase military access from Sudzal, we would have to pay 5 ducats. We want to purchase it from Kiev, it was going to have to pay 18 ducats, so a little bit more expensive. Getting military access will allow our units to move through that nation's provinces. Now that we've got the basics down, let's talk about a little bit more complicated things, such as the army. Armies are how you fuel your expansion or defend your country. There's 2 types of armies. There's levies and there's regulars, and there's also mercenaries. So I guess there's 3 types of armies. Before we talk about that though, So there are a lot of things illustrated in the Army and the Navy tab. What you need to know is your Army morale, which determines how long your armies can fight for before they retreat. Your discipline, which increases the damage that your armies do in combat, as well as it lowers the damage that they take in combat. So more discipline, better soldiers, as well as your army tactics, which reduce the damage taken by regiments in combat. Experience also reduces the damage taken in combat, and you gain experience for your armies by drilling them. So we have the drill button. You drill your armies by clicking the drill army button after you've researched the drill army advance, which is one of the early advances in the Age of Renaissance after you've unlocked professional armies institution. Early on in the campaign, your main type of soldiers will be levies, and honestly you kind of want to rely on levies all the way till the 3rd, even 4th age, since levies are actually pretty overpowered in the current patch of EU5. That's because levies such as the matchlock levy of the 3rd age have 1,000 soldiers in a regiment, which means they can easily fill up the front line, whilst the regular soldiers, even in the 3rd age, only have 400 soldiers in a regiment, which means their frontage is going to be lacking. Sure, they're better soldiers. There's a lot more to go into this. I'm trying to give a very basic overview. Keep that in mind. I have a dedicated army mechanics guide that I recommend you guys check out. To put it very straightforward, in the 1st and 2nd age, you don't want to have regular soldiers. It's just a waste of manpower, a waste of money. If you really want to have anything, you could just get a couple of soldiers. After you've researched the professional army advance, you want to research the armory advance, which will start giving you monthly manpower. And after that, once you've got a little bit of manpower set up, you research men-at-arms, which is your basic frontline soldiers. You research hoofness as well as handgunners, and of course the adjacent cannon makers and gunsmiths, because you need these particular buildings to build the guns and the cannons for these units. And then you could have about, say, 5, 6, 10 units of handgunners with men-at-arms mixed, and then 10 hoofnesses. You actually just want the hoofnesses to siege down fortifications faster, and the other regular soldiers to protect your cannons, and then mix that in with an actual levy army in the first 2 ages. Even in the 3rd age, the same situation. From the 4th age onwards, of course, is different completely, because from the 4th age onwards, your standard soldiers are 800 strong, which is about the same as the levies, but they also have the bonuses of being actual regular soldiers, so they're actually decent in combat. Take note, every standard regular unit will have a maintenance cost. In this case, for the 4th age unit, it's 16 per regiment. So an armory doesn't even maintain a single regiment of arquebusiers. You need 2 armories to maintain 1 regiment of arquebusiers. Even the very first men-at-arms will cost you 4 maintenance of manpower per month to simply maintain, alongside the financial cost, because yes, they also cost army maintenance in ducats. So how do we get more levies then, is the real question. Well, more levies is based off of your population. So you have a lot of different pops. We go back to the society tab. We've got a lot of Prussians that are a primary culture. We got a lot of other cultures here as the Teutons that are not even tolerated. So we need to first off make these cultures tolerated if we have the cultural capacity for it, and then we need to make them accepted again if we have the cultural capacity. So in our case, no cultural capacity. We went over it by a lot, but by accepting Kashubians, which is a big chunk of our country, we now can raise more levies, as both accepted and primary cultures can be taken as levies. Later in the campaign, you will have advances that you research. In the 3rd age, you will have the foreign culture law advance, which will allow you to either increase your cultural capacity or raise more non-accepted, non-primary culture levies, the blood tax for foreigners. So I've got a little army here, and we actually see all the different regiments in the army. What we want to do is we want to consolidate regiments that will merge them into bigger 1,000 strong regiments if possible for the levies, whilst the regulars stay 100 strong, because these are age 1 standing army soldiers that can only go up to 100. We see whether they're a regular or a levy from the little shield next to them. Similarly, if they're mercenaries, they have the mercenary shield next to them. What's really vital when setting up our armies is that we have a equally distributed frontage. So we go formation and we make sure that all of our troops are properly assigned. Right now we've got 200 soldiers on the left flank, 1,000 on the right, 1,000 in the center, so we want to have a little bit more in the left flank. That being said, the frontage itself is still not fully used. That means when we engage our enemies, if they've got more frontage than us, they will be able to do more damage as they'll have more soldiers engaged than us. So you always want to have a maximum of 10 out of 10 frontage. If you go over the frontage, those units are just going to eventually end up in reserve and they're going to take morale damage. You don't want to be in that position. So you need to balance out your armies properly, have enough to fill up the front, as well as have enough soldiers to fight, because even though you might have enough soldiers for the front, in this case we've got 4 regiments, which means 4 out of 10 frontage. There's only 300 soldiers because 3 of these regiments are 100 strong and one of the regiments, the cavalry regiment, is 51 strong. So despite having a lot of frontage, it will collapse a lot faster than the other 2 sides because there's less units to fight. You also want to assign a good general. Take note, some generals might have general traits. So this guy here gives assault ability plus 10%, but he's really bad overall. So we want to assign someone that also has decent military stats. And if we have regular soldiers, we can automatically refill garrisons. That way, once we've taken enemy fortifications, we don't need to manually refill garrison. It's going to be done by the army without us asking it to. Now, we have engaged the enemy here, but we have a big issue. Namely, our center is not there. What's happening? Why are they in reserve? Why are they not there? Well, that is because we don't have enough initiative. So it takes a little bit of initiative before these units get to the front line. After we unpause, you see they already have gotten to the front line. So now they're damaging the enemy front as well as the center. The enemy center has collapsed, which means it's likely that we're going to win this battle now, since they're taking extra damage on the other 2 flanks. And there you go. We have indeed won our very first battle against one of the many enemies. We've also dealt significantly more damage because our units are of higher quality, and we gained a trait for our general infantry power plus 10%, which means our units are 10% stronger and they deal 10% more damage to the enemy units. Now, take note, sometimes the imminent battle is not going to be accurate. Even though it's green, you might lose the battle, or if it's red, you might win the battle. In fact, it was red, the outcome for the previous battle, and we clearly won that. Never rely on this. You really need to make sure you've got the right units for the right battle. It's something that comes with experience, to be fair. One thing you can do to always help out is consolidate regiments after battles. That way you will have less levies, for example, of 50, 30, 100 units and more of 1,000 units, which means the frontage is going to have proper soldiers, because you might be able to have 10 out of 10 usage in the front, but all 10 out of 10 is 5-6 dudes in each regiment. Get what I'm saying? That is a recipe for disaster. You don't want that to happen. Now, when you go to your navies tab, it's similar to the army. You have the navy morale, damage dealt, and taken reduction. This is the same like the discipline for the armies. And then you've got the naval range, which determines how far you can actually explore and send off colonies and such. We do start as the Castilians with 14 ships, and we're going to assign our king in charge of these ships for now, which gives us the extra crown power. Now, there's different types of ships. There's galleys mostly at the start of the campaign, and eventually you will be able to research more advances that unlock more ships that in general are upgrades to your starting ships. The Hulk is an upgrade, for example, to your transport ship from the beginning of the campaign, whilst the Bark is the first light ship most nations will have access to, unlocked in the Age of Renaissance. Ships have different purposes. Light ships, for example, are better at spreading maritime presence. Maritime presence is a value that increases in sea tiles when you have ships assigned to it. And even though barks might perform well in doing that particular task, even your galleys that you start with also will be able to do the same task, although not as efficiently. So if we go to our formation, we see we actually start with light ships too, not just galleys. So this is a galley, this is a light ship from the first stage, the early Iberian caravel. So the Iberians have the option of building this ship. It has 0.10 maritime presence, 0.04 less than the bark. If you go to the maritime presence map mode, we see we're getting 0.06 maritime presence from our ships being present in that sea tile. You want to assign ships by going to the objective, patrol the seas, and you assign whatever coastlines you want to increase your maritime presence in. Generally speaking, it's best to have about 20 ships assigned to 4 sea tiles. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 on the map. That's it. 20 ships. We don't have enough ships. Early on, ships is going to be an issue. How do you get ships? Well, first off, you need to have sailors to build ships. The earliest building most nations will be able to use is the wharf. The wharf increases sailors by 1, so not many. Alternatively, some nations have unique buildings, like the Castilians have the Brethren of the Marsh, which allows them to get 10 monthly sailors, and these can be built in the marshes of the northern parts of Castile. But for most nations, your first first ships will come after you build the dock, the first proper naval building that has its upgrades afterwards, the dry dock, the shipyard, and so on with every passing age. These give you a lot of sailors, the ability to build ships there, and this particular advance is unlocked after you've gotten banking as an institution unlocked and you move further down the banking tree. I also forgot to talk about mercenaries. That's because mercenaries, unless you're insanely rich, are not really worth it. The way you get mercenaries, guys, is you hire mercenary leader if there's none already available on the market, and then you can decide how many units that mercenary can have. You can do the slider that decides, say I want to have 7 footmen from this mercenary, 0 archers, 0 horsemen, and I want 6 armored horsemen. That will cost you more or less based on how many units you want to hire. There's a specific amount of months you can hire this mercenary for before you have to renew the contract, and there's a monthly cost as well as a limit to the amount of regiments that he can have when you hire him. The contract length in months also is determined here, and in general, again, not worth it unless you're super rich. You want to use that money to develop your country further rather than waste it on mercenaries, if you ask me. One more thing we can do here is the Geopolitics tab. So from this, we have a few important things. The Disease tab, which determines what kind of diseases currently are roaming through your country, as well as if you hover on the map, you see the resistance to those diseases for your locations and the current living population, as well as all the dead population throughout years you see in the slider here. Now we also will talk right here about the Black Death, which is a situation that triggers in 1346. It can last for a few years. It will wipe out a big chunk of the world's population, and the way that this works is after it triggers, if you have historical on in the Golden Horde, it slowly spreads around the world. It will spread especially from market to market. So if you're trading with another market that has the Black Plague or bubonic plague, whatever you want to call it, present within that market, then it will likely come to your area of the map, and what happens afterwards is it will start spreading to your provinces. That will kill off a lot of your population. We lost in our game here 1 million population already. You've got a few options you can do when it triggers though. You can move your court into hiding, which lowers the chances of your members of your court to die, which is good obviously, especially if you have a good leader. You don't want him to die. In our case, we have a horrible leader, so we're not moving anyone to the court because we're praying that he dies. He's 16. Please don't survive much longer with those stats. You can control the food market. Don't recommend doing this. This is just bait. Isolate the country. Don't recommend doing this. You need to wait for the Black Death. You want it to trigger. You want it to come to your country. It's something that has to naturally happen, because if we go back to the disease tab on our geopolitics and we hover over our provinces, since the Black Death spread to our lands, it has increased our disease resistance to the plague. Compared to the 15% of whatever we start with, we went to 78%. So that means that if this particular disease will trigger again in the future, less of our population will die, because that's right, the Black Death can't trigger again. It's a situation once, but the disease itself, the bubonic plague, will trigger multiple times throughout your campaign. So you want to build up that natural disease resistance, which does over time go down. So even though you might have super high disease resistance in the 1350s after the death passed through, in the 1500s, if you never had it again for 200 years, it will be again low, so it might crush your country. Also, if the bubonic plague in particular has a presence of 20% or above in your provinces, you will get all of these debuffs, so keep that in mind as well. You can build disease resistance buildings like the hospital and the mission early on in the campaign. When the situation happens, don't do it because it's not worth it. You're not gonna have the money, and even if you do have the money, it's better to spend it on some other things rather than waste it on hospitals, which only give 10% disease resistance. You will get more disease resistance from advances later in the campaign, but for this particular situation, the only thing you should be doing is segregate the infected. That's right, don't procure remedies. That's bait. It looks good and it does give some benefits, but it doesn't help keep more of a population alive. Segregate the infected will increase your disease resistance by 15%, so that means there's 15% of your pops less that will be affected by this disease and have less of a chance of dying, whilst expelling the sick can let you build a pest house that increase disease resistance by 30%, but you gotta individually build this in every province, so you're not gonna have the money to build it everywhere. Just go for segregating the infected. The only thing you need to do not ever sponsor mass forgiveness, because that's gonna kill 10% more of your population possibly. You get 10% less disease resistance, which is horrible, whilst presenting scapegoat is good because it means you get a little bit of stability, but more importantly, you get population conversion speed. So this isn't particularly good if you have a lot of pops you need to convert. Otherwise, not necessarily as beneficial because you still lose 10 if you want to repel it at some point. The Maritime tab determines your maritime presence as well as the trade advantage that results from that particular maritime presence. The most important tab in geopolitics is the territory tab. You can choose to explore explore land or sea tiles first off, which will give you visibility over that area. For land tiles, it will cost you manpower and ducats. For sea tiles, it will cost sailors and ducats. Now, if there are areas that are not colonized, you can go to colonies and you can set up a colonial charter. You can choose the origin from where your colonists will start migrating into that area. So we can do it from Moscow Sea in our particular case. That way, we now have 44 individuals moving to this particular colonial charter in Isma every month. Eventually, when 100% of the colonial charter has been settled, we get direct control, as well as every province here will be an integrated province without us having to set our cabinet member to manually integrate the colony. Now, the last tab, but definitely not the least, probably one of the more important tabs, is the advances tab. So here we get our technologies that give us a variety of bonuses. Early on, you want to go for technologies that affect your country instantly. So for example, the 0.05 diplomats will instantly affect your country because you're going to get, instead of 0.1 by default, you're going to get 0.15 by default diplomats every month, allowing you to do more diplomatic interactions. Same here, institution growth will be good early on, so you get Renaissance and the other institutions spawning in. Cost of purchasing food again is really good, since it's going to be cheaper to purchase when you're lacking food on your market. If we go to the advanced tree, we've got 6 different ages. Every single age has different advances, and the way that you have access to these advances is by embracing institutions. You get access to your institutions by going to the ages tab. At the start of the campaign, we start with feudalism and legalism as Europeans, whilst meritocracy is not present here. If we hover over the institution, we see where it's present. Nowhere around us. That's because it starts in Asia, so for that to come over to Europe will take a very long time. The main way for institutions to spread is via trade. So if we go to trade, if an institution is present within a market, then if you trade with that market, it will slowly start bringing the institution to your provinces. If we go to the institutions map mode, for example, we see right now most of the Central European parts and Italy have most of the institutions present, whilst Eastern Europe is not really the case. But if we go to Novgorod, we do have in Novgorod professional armies present at 100% in this location, whilst Renaissance and banking are starting to spread here. And this spread, if we hover over, is by 0.1 from import from locations with banking, if it is present within that particular market you're trading with. And then after that is done, all the other modifiers get put into place, so you get more than 0.10, in this case 0.15 every month for that institution. Once it fully reaches Novgorod, it can start going to adjacent provinces. So we see that professional army is spreading in the adjacent Chudovu province because it is also present in the Novgorod province that it borders. So in Kresy, it is spreading by 1.08, since Kresy is also a part of the same market as Novgorod. Embracing institutions will cost you, so for us to embrace meritocracy, we would need to have at least 20% spread of this particular institution to our provinces or locations, and then it will cost, based on the amount of spread, more or less stability and ducats. Once you have it spread, you will have access to the entirety of that particular advanced tree, and you can go down the tree, get all the technologies you like to go for. Some technologies are more important than others, of course. Early on, you want to prioritize Renaissance, and then you want to prioritize getting the extra government reform and the extra cabinet seat before anything else, if you can. But that depends. If you're not able to spread Renaissance and you got the professional army before Renaissance, of course, you want to go for the armory first, men at arms, and then handgunners with hoofnits. These are the main ones from the professional army. Once that's done, you can get the rest of them if you don't have any other available advances to go for. And for banking, you want to go for the counting house, which is a unique building that increases your local crown power wherever it's being built in. You also want to research different new laws, such as bureaucracy, which will increase your centralization value if you go for centralized bureaucracy, and even new production methods like rag paper, which will produce more paper with different types of goods as input. Now that we've talked about most of the things in the game, you should have a better understanding, but we're not done yet. We actually still have a lot to talk about. First off, let's talk about control and proximity. Control, what is control? Control determines how much you get from your provinces. It is the most important value in the game. So if we hover over our capital is always going to be at 100 control, but that's not the case for all the other provinces around us, right? So if we go on, say for example, the province in Fozdinovo, we only have 32 control, but right now there's actually 46 in there. That's temporary. Whatever our maximum control is where the control will settle settle eventually. So right now it's moving towards 32 from 46, which means every month we're losing 0.50 control until it stops at 32.24. How do we increase our control? Well, early on it's not that easy, but there are ways. First off, you need to make sure you make cores out of your provinces. Whenever you've conquered a province from another nation, it will be a conquered location, like is the case in here. To make it an integrated location, you need to either assign a cabinet member to do it, as we have in the case of this particular province, or by default there's going to be a 0.10 base value of integration for the entire province. So that gets distributed depending on how many locations there's in that province. In our case, that means that we've got 0.03 for each location, as there's 3 locations, so it rounds itself up basically. Now, having assigned a cabinet member to speed this up, we also get an extra 0.5 in each of the location, since there's 3 locations. And then there's other modifiers that multiply this, such as power projection, our current cultural influence versus the Emilian cultural tradition, which means that our cultural influence of 67 is more than the Emilian cultural tradition of 61. We have a little bit over, which helps us integrate this faster. If it becomes a core, then you get 20% maximum control. So that's the first thing you do to get more control. What else can we do? Well, we go to the location rank map mode, and we see that we have some rural locations and some towns. Towns, if we hover over, increase our max control by 5%, while cities, that are the golden ones, increase max control by 10%. But it doesn't stop there. We also get max control increase by building a temple in our towns and our cities, that again increases max control by 5%. And there's an even more important building, the road. So if we go to the road map mode, we already build road in every single one of our locations. What roads do is they lower the proximity cost by a flat 20, which is a massive amount. If we go back to our control map mode and we say hover over this location here, and then we go to the maximum control, the proximity to capital increases our control by 62.78%. That is because if we go to the proximity, we've got really high nearest proximity source. The further away you are from your proximity source, which usually is either your capital or a bailiff, the less proximity you get. So in this particular province, the 100 proximity source from the capital gets reduced by every single province through which it passes. That lowers that more and more. There are modifiers that help with this, as you can see over here, and even values that help with this. Remember that I said earlier, the centralization value gives proximity cost reduction. Going land value also can give that, or naval can give that through sea tiles, as well as the proximity cost from your ruler's ability helps with that too. Proximity and control are basically tied to one another. You want to stack proximity cost modifiers. The capital modifier, having friendly armies in the province, also can increase your maximum control, by the way, depending on the size of the army. We've got a very tiny one, so if we were to increase our army size, we would have more maximum control in the entirety of the province, not just in the location where the army is located. Another thing to do to increase early on is you go to the labor buildings and you can create bridges. Bridges cannot be built everywhere though. You can only build bridges in locations that have both a river and a road. So even there might be a river here, if we didn't build a road beforehand, we don't have the option of building the bridge. Why do we want to build a bridge? Well, the bridge lowers the local proximity cost by 5%, as well as it lowers the movement cost by 10%. Later on, once you unlock the paved roads, you get proximity cost minus 25, for modern minus 30, and for railways minus 30 flat proximity cost. If we go to our ledger and we go to modifiers, we type in proximity, we see that the proximity cost through port is plus 40, through road is plus 20, through land is plus 40. You also can see here the proximity cost modifiers stacked. So the centralization, the advance, the ability of the ruler give minus 13.48 modifier. So it's a good idea to go to your ledger once in a while to see what exactly is affecting your country, not just from a proximity perspective, but from every perspective. Another important thing that can increase your maximum control, or better yet lower it, is satisfaction. If your population is not satisfied at 0 satisfaction, such as in this province, it will lower your maximum control by 10 If it's 100% satisfied, like in this adjacent province, then you have no penalty to maximum control. So if we had 100% satisfaction for our provinces, we would get significantly more maximum control, and that's easy to do early in the campaign. It is influenced by a lot of things. In our case here, a particular event is lowering our own satisfaction. So once we get rid of that event, we should have more control overall. And there are a lot of advances that unlock either flat modifiers or buildings, such as the Pound Lock Canal, which is a building that can be built in towns and cities that even further lower local proximity cost. It scales with the bridge as well. So overall, the idea is you want to upgrade your locations to cities and towns when you have the option. You want to do every other thing that I mentioned to increase your control. And this takes me to the next topic of this video. When do we upgrade to cities? When do we keep it as rural location? Very important thing to know. Going back to the location map mode. In general, guys, if you have the option to upgrade to a city or town, you want to do it with two exceptions. You go to the raw material map mode, and if in that particular location there's a raw material that is in super high demand, such as, say, for example, gold locations like we have here, you want to keep this a rural location for the entirety of the campaign, because rural locations actually have a maximum RGO size increase of 100%, as well as local food production plus 10. The RGO size is the one we want, right? That means we can essentially have twice as more gold provinces at the start in a rural location compared to a town or a city. Later on, you're going to have a lot of advances and other ways to increase the amount of RGOs in your locations. But in general, you want to keep gold, silver as rural ones forever. There's also an argument to be made for wheat locations and livestock locations to be kept as you progress in the campaign. So we got to save here in the 1600s. It's a very different story, okay? So early on, you want to leave locations as rural so you get the extra output of food. But we're getting 18 wheat in the rural location of Lapsakos. However, in the city location of Artemia Thermaya, we're getting 11, 7 less. However, we can have an extra 13 irrigation. If we max out our irrigation, that gives us a lot more local food production, because per level we get 15% food production. So we would actually be making more food from the city than we would from the rural location with the irrigation ditches fully built. Plus, we're making 65 tax because of all the other buildings we built in here. The control is significantly higher because, again, the buildings and the location is a city rank. And the rural location, it's only 12 tax. And yes, maybe there's a bit more food. And yes, we can max out the farming villages that, again, increase local food production. But it would be just like a fraction more food compared to the city. And we can just import that fraction of food from other parts of the world. That being said, if we go over to our gold provinces, say this gold province here, we're getting 16 units of gold with an output of 2.67 per unit. So we're making 42 units of gold. You do not want to upgrade this to a city. You want to keep this as a rural location. So now, why is this happening? It's because of the Mercury Patio. Mercury Patio gives 100% extra output of gold and silver. So if it's fully employed, which right now it's not, we would have 200 extra output of gold in this location. So we would make even more than the 42 units that we're making of gold in the Castra ad Montanesium. So yes, by the late game, everything should be town or city rank if you have the population and the money to upgrade those areas, with the exception of silver and gold. That's it. And goes without saying, you also want to upgrade your roads to modern roads or railways or whatever you have as soon as you get the money, because it is the most easy way to increase your control and increase your economy overall. I really hope you learned something from today's video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and leave notifications on so you get notified when I get more videos out, as well as get the game for yourself with my code if you haven't yet, or any game from the Paradox website. You get a Steam code afterwards you can redeem on Steam. And let me know in the comment section what other topics you'd like me to discuss. This video is extremely long already. I didn't want to make it even longer. That's why if you want more in-depth explanations for each of the stuff we talked about today and more, check the description. You're going to see more mechanics guide popping out throughout the rest of this particular month.